You may have heard her name in the news for helping a homeless man named Tatay Carlos and his 6 dogs. But that noble deed is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Professor Mary Laureen Velasco. She's not your ordinary professor at the De La Salle University. She's also a devoted cat mom to homeless cats. Her years of cat advocacy led to the creation of DLSU PUSA, a group dedicated to helping stray cats not only within the DLSU campus, but also in the surrounding community. Listen to her story and be inspired. This is Rochelle Rubio, and this is The Advocates, Empowering Voices. She recently made headlines for helping a homeless individual with pet dogs by donating a customized pedicab with support from other sponsors. A well-loved animal welfare advocate at De La Salle University, she is known to students, faculty, and staff not only as an educator, but also for her passionate advocacy. Who is Professor Laureen Velasco?
Well, I'm into philosophy and I'm the pusang ina in La Salle. So basically those are the two things that really dominate my life right now. It's a wonderful advocacy. It's a wonderful profession.
Professor Laureen first took notice of 67-year-old Tatay Carlos Orit during the pandemic. Tatay Carlos has lived on the streets all his life, but he is never alone. He is always with his dogs. An instant connection formed between Professor Laureen and Tatay Carlos, rooted in their shared advocacy for animals. Professor Laureen for cats and Tatay Carlos for dogs.
Well, the first time I bumped into him was during the pandemic. Taft was empty and I was going to the campus to feed the cats. I was here the whole pandemic because there was only one volunteer allowed to enter the campus. So I was the one doing that. And I bumped into him. You cannot not notice him because he has so many dogs and then some of them are on the balcony. So it's a quite unique setup for him. And then he would park near between gate 2 and gate 3. And I was going to gate 1. So I would see him every so often. And then we started to have conversation, because he's taking care of animals. Although I'm not really taking care of dogs, I'm into cat advocacy. I finally struck a conversation with him, said hi. And then one day in 2021, he said, ay gusto ko pong ipakapon yung aking babaeng aso. And then I started posting on him to seek for, donations for the dogs. And then eventually, lahat na ng aso niya, plus the vaccination, so yung kapon, vaccination, the 5-in-1, the deworming, and then tuloy-tuloy na. And then eventually, I started also asking for help for him. At first, we were just helping the animals kasi nga animal advocacy kami. And then eventually, people also felt pity for Tatay Carlos and so we started helping him as well. And we did not actually expect the kind of reception that we got. The very first, we've been helping him for many years already. But in October or September, two alumni decided to do a mini documentary on him. Philippine star yata to.
That marked the beginning of Tatay Carlos's media exposure. As more media outlets featured his story, he gained greater opportunities for support. What began as help for his dogs soon extended to help for Tatay Carlos himself, culminating in a suggestion from their followers to provide him with a pedicab.
Our followers said, why don't we give him a new pedicab? At first, puro plano, until the mula came, we really couldn't move, Yeah, you cannot, you have to have money to pay for the thing, not just the ideas and the plans.
Then someone went the extra mile and approached Professor Laureen to ask how the pedicab donation for Tatay Carlos could be made a reality. In less than a month, they successfully turned over the pedicab to a grateful Tatay Carlos.
Finally, I met somebody who came to La Salle who had a meeting with the brother president, and she decided to see me to inquire how we could finally provide the pedicab. So ang bilis lang, in less than a month. Tapos, basta't may pera, mabilis eh. And then we finally delivered it last month. So wala pang ang 1 month. So May 10 yun when we finally turned over.
With the help of generous donors, Professor Laureen and her team were able to surprise Tatay Carlos with a custom-made pedicab designed for him and his 6 dogs.
It was basically siguro 60% surprise. So, but we were telling him, because I had to ask him for the specs. Ano ba yung needs mo? Ano ba yung ganito? So we wanted something durable. Siyempre custom-made siya. because it's not for passengers, it's for 6 dogs that he's taking care of and himself. So medyo tinatanong-tanong ko siya, ano pa yung ganito, ano ba yung ganyan. So he had an idea. He understands it more than I do. So
Tatay Carlos has been living on the streets since he was orphaned at the age of 10. 57 years without a roof over his head, without walls for protection, and without the basic comforts of his own restroom or bathroom. The noisy, polluted streets have been his home for more than 5 decades. His dogs are his refuge.
living on the street for 57 years since he was 10 years old. His parents died. His mother died first, and then his father died. He has siblings, but I don't know, for some reason. And then sabi niya, minsan kukup-kupin, 2, 3 days, tapos noon, mananawa na. So, alam niya yung ganung feeling. And then he decided to just live by himself. I understand the freedom. He's had offers to move into an animal shelter in the province. It's too far because his dogs do not eat pure dog food. So he gets food from the restaurant. Wala niyan if he moves to the province. And then there's an institution taking him in, but without the dogs. That's out of the question. Definitely no. The answer is no. Meron naman taking in the dogs but not him. So, various setups. And at the end of the day, he really just wants to stay in Metro Manila. And then yung iba parang naaksar, may offer ka na, ganyan. But you don't understand, the freedom eh. Di baling, sabi niya ngayong matanda ko, ngayon pa ba ako mangangamuhan? Di ba, ngayon pa ba ako makikisama and all that. Although I was telling him that the biggest factor, of course, is the fact that you are 67 years old. If I told him, Patay, if you're 30 years old, hindi ako masyadong mag-aalala. But you're 67 with arthritis and all that, so yun. We are still hoping that one day he would have a nice setup that he would finally be amenable to.
Despite offers to relocate him without his dogs, Tatay Carlos chose the streets over living in a house or shelter without them.
You provide the basic needs, there's a roof over his head, but his heart will be empty. So you cannot. I understand perfectly where he's coming from. That's his homily.
It wasn't only Tatay Carlos who was excited about the gift. Professor Lorene and her team were overjoyed as they presented the pedicab to him. Their hearts full of happiness and excitement. Even the dogs shared in the moment, frolicking with such joy that they climbed onto the pedicab's roof and ended up damaging it.
Siyempre, super excited kami. We were about 4 in the team. There are some NASDAQ employees also contributing, but until we really got the big donor, hindi kami makagalaw because it was an expensive, customized pedicab, So, na-excite kami. Tapos yun na nga, dineliver na. And I posted on that, and of course, the main people involved were around during the turnover. So na-excite din si Tatay. I had the small roofs fixed yesterday kasi we were not anticipating the dogs would go up the roof. Ano lang yon parang trapal that could not carry their weight. So sabi ko, kailangan din to, roof na bakal. So nagpa-welding kami yesterday for that.
Professor Lorene's team had to repair the pedicab's roof and reinforce it to make it sturdier for the dogs to climb on. The total cost of the custom-made pedicab reached 40,000 pesos.
We're making adjust. Meron namang balcony, pero mas umakyat pa dun sa roof so nasira yung roof. Plus nabagsakan there was a branch of tree that fell on that roof during one rainy day or evening. So nabagsakan, so nasira. Ganun naman, we're prepared. Kailangan ng repair, so we're stepping up also for that.
The pedicab is a tremendous help for Tatay Carlos and his dogs. But Professor Lorene says it's only a small part of the many challenges he faces every single day of his life.
But this is a one-shot deal. But really what he needs most is the daily sustenance. Namin priority actually yung pedicab unless we have somebody really donating specifically for that. We'd like to really sustain yung kanyang daily needs, the food. Okay, so yun ang pinaka-importante.
Did Tatay Carlos catch the attention of the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD?
He came last weekend. Kaso galit na galit si Tatay because they were saying, umuwi na lang po kayo sa probinsya. Ganyan. Talagang. And so when somebody from that group messaged me, I said, well, some of your people came to see him today and he was very upset. Bakit niyo siya pinauuwi sa probinsya? Dito siya pinanganak, dito siya lumaki. He's been there for 57 years. parang out of mind, out of sight. No, we are private citizens who have been helping him for so many years. If you can still help him, but you don't step up and tell him what to do. Even, I mean, despite the fact that I've been helping him for so many years, I never dictated on him what to do with his life.
Unfortunately, the DSWD and Tatay Carlos did not reach an agreement as both parties had different approaches to addressing his concerns.
Respeto sa matanda. I mean, susulpot ka sa buhay niya ngayon lang, tapos sa feeling mo, just because you're helping, you can just tell him what he wants. Freedom, give him that dignity to decide for himself. May dumating, so sinumbong na sa akin ng guard. Bago ko pa siya pinuntahan. So lumabas ako, tay, dumating daw yung DSWD na high blood talaga si tatay. Pinauuwi daw siya sa probinsya. So I did ask the person who messaged me. Kasi sabi niya, kami po yung dumating kanina. Bakit mo siya pinauuwi sa probinsya? Diba? Dadating kayo, gusto niyo tumulong kayo. Kasi he needs the help also.
Tatay Carlos would rather live alone on the streets with his dogs than be a burden to his siblings.
Mas di bali ng isang kahig at isang tuka, but the freedom and the dignity and the peace of mind. Tapos yung wala kang naririnig, di ba, na isa kang pabigat, isa kang ganyan. You'd rather go hungry than go through something like that, di ba? So, emotions kasi importante din yan eh, hindi lang yung tiyan. So, ganon.
Professor Lorene has been Tatay Carlos's voice in seeking help, especially for dog food and veterinary care for his dogs. She provided him with cash to cover these expenses. Sadly, living on the streets comes with many risks. Even a homeless man like Tatay Carlos has fallen victim to thieves who stole his money.
Oo. Pero minsan gusto rin ng dog food. Minsan bumibili rin siya. So, I posted a plea na rin for the dogs. Shampoo, the soap, iba? And of course, the vet needs, the veterinary needs. So, ganon. We take it 1 day at a time or 1 week at a time. So, I see him every weekend. So, tatay, ito yung budget mo for this week, ganyan. Tapos minsan nagagalit ako pag nananakaw. Bakit kasi nilagay mo dyan sa pantalon mo? Alam mo nang hinihiwa. So, ganyan, it's a dog-eat-dog world. Kahit na homeless. But he knows those people, relatives then.
It's hard to comprehend how people could take advantage of a homeless elderly man. Professor Lorene has become a guardian and protector for Tatay Carlos.
Malupit. So parang ako yung naging guardian niya.
Tatay Carlos is just one of the many homeless individuals Professor Lorene has helped. Beyond that, she has always had a deep passion for animals, especially cats. At De La Salle University, there is an organization dedicated to caring for the campus cat community called DLSU PUSA. PUSA stands for Professor for the Upliftment of Society's Animals. The group primarily focuses on feeding, neutering, and spaying to control the cat population, providing vaccinations and anti-rabies shots, medical care, and facilitating the adoption or rehoming of stray cats. Professor Lorene is one of the founding and core members of DLSU PUSA, which is supported by faculty, alumni, and a large group of student volunteers. She remains very hands-on in the organization's efforts.
The ones running it now, heavily student volunteers yan. I have a couple of parents, a couple of alumni, but syempre the students are on the ground. But I am really there as a core member, and I'm the one here 365 days a year. I'm the only one with an entry permit. Should there be a typhoon, an earthquake, so napag-usapan na yan. VP Admin approved my entry permit in times of disaster. Because I said, you cannot not allow. We are not taking care of buildings. We are taking care of living beings. They have to eat every day. So let it be me. I said, you will not be accountable to anybody. Let it be me. And so that was approved. That was approved.
The birth of DLSU PUSA. How did it all begin? And what challenges have the core members overcome over the years?
My other core members are busy. They're administrators, they couldn't really be here as much as I can. So yun na yun. But it really started with me because I launched my kapon in my subdivision, quarterly libreng kapon for the strays, the street cats in my subdivision. And my chairperson was the one who came to bring her 2 rescues. And she said, why don't we do the same thing in La Salle? So the DLSU PUSA was born in the philosophy department. My colleague finally coined the acronym PUSA, yun na nga, Professors for the Upliftment of Society's Animals. At first, people were kind of shooting it down, it's not gonna thrive. But kasi professors yung the founders, we were spearheading that, they couldn't just shoot it down, shoot that down. And of course, the Laudato Si, 10 years din yan, ni Pope Francis, Laudato Si. So everything just fell into place. Good stewardship does not mean dominion anymore and manipulation and control of nature, but rather cooperation, coexistence. So big words, learning coexistence. So when the problems arose, you think it's easy to learn coexistence. We've had problems. We continue to have problems, the scratching incidents and all that. And of course, people who are anti-cat, you'll never have, you will always have that in every community. But the difference is our policymakers are compassionate and willing to widen the circle of compassion. Yun eh. Even if you have compassionate citizens, yung leaders mo, policymakers mo, pardon the term, you're not gonna thrive. But in LaSalle, our policymakers, they're not necessarily cat people, but they understand advocacy. And of course, yun na, the Laudato Si.
DLSU PUSA is an accredited organization at De La Salle University under the Lasallian Mission Office.
We are under the Lasallian Mission Office. During the deliberation, somebody was saying, you have to be a certain office. Hindi pwedeng floating ka dyan. And so the brother Michael Broughton, at the time, who was the vice president for the Lasallian Mission, took us in. So he's the godfather. He's our godfather. And then we had our first TV documentary, our second or third. We've had 11 TV appearances already.
Now in its 10th year, DLSU PUSA continues to be a beacon of hope for stray cats seeking shelter on campus.
We started celebrating its 10th year this year. I did not imagine DLSU PUSA to become this big and so many, utang na loob, walang day off. I did not sign up for this, but the challenges came and I just responded. The needs arose. So how can you just turn your back just because it got more difficult, it got more expensive? So sige na.
The responsibility weighs heavily, especially on Professor Lorene, who remains deeply involved in feeding the cats and championing all the organization's causes. She also frequently shares updates and information about the campus cats on social media. For Professor Lorene, there's no turning back. She would do the same over 1 million lifetimes. DLSU PUSA goes beyond just the welfare of cats. They advocate for the well-being of all living creatures, including wildlife. For example, they opposed the university's plan to introduce birds into the botanical garden where the birds would have lived in captivity.
We actually also wrote a position paper opposing the bringing in of birds for the newly renovated botanical garden. I said, no, you do not condemn them to a life of captivity. It is not how we do things anymore. How are we going to teach environmental ethics if we have those birds? Padating na. So, naka-social media, the MOA had been signed, gawa na yung botanical garden. Ang ganda ng cage. The birds were ready to be moved into the cage, and we said, no, wait a minute. We did not realize until they removed the tarps na talagang, what the heck is that big cage doing there? What is that for? Ayun pala, they were bringing in some birds, and I said, no. And some administrators also didn't like the idea. Hindi na, we don't do that anymore. Do you understand how wildlife has been suffering because of being smuggled into various places across continents? Birds put into mineral water bottles. Some of them will, of course, survive the trip. Some of them will just die in transit. Kawawa.
Their strong opposition led to a victory. Victory for the birds who were spared from being caged instead of living free. Victory for environmental ethics. Victory for education and animal welfare. And victory for advocates like Prof. Lorene, who stood firm in defense of wildlife.
It always boils down to money. The way wildlife has been treated, it always boils down to money.
The DLSU administration is very supportive of DLSU PUSA's causes, having even constructed cart apartments called PUSA rooms in a designated area that used to be a parking lot. These serve as shelters for the stray cats, protecting them from hazards like getting hit by cars and other dangers on campus.
That's our third PUSA room. LaSalle has been so nice and so kind to us. Of course, all utilities paid for by LaSalle. That room actually was built from the ground. Parking area yan eh. I was asked for specifications, what we needed, and then the sink. Of course, you have the plumbing there because we need water for the laundry, for the washing. That was constructed from the ground.
DLSU PUSA is fortunate to have a school administration that is open-minded and supportive of their organization's causes.
In campus, you cannot be a world-class university if you're narrow-minded. Your administrators have to be broad-minded, open to listening to arguments. But not all LaSalle schools, ha? Yung iba medyo nagsa-struggle pa. You're at the mercy of your policymakers.
Currently, Professor Lorene and her team care for about 60 campus cats, in addition to other stray animals in the surrounding neighborhood.
I think now we have about 60 campus cats, 50 to 60 campus cats, and then the neighborhood cats. Inside the campus, we have yung mga the near the LRT, the P.O. Campo, Nolo Street, beyond the sports building. Pera lang ang katapat but we really want to help more street cats.
Beyond feeding, Prof. Lorene and DLSU PUSA also advocate for kapon. The benefits are so profound that for Prof. Lorene, spaying or neutering a cat may be the best thing you can do for its well-being.
It's really very, very compassionate. It is said that it is the kindest thing that you can do to the homeless animals. Siyempre, they just driven by instincts. They will mate and then give birth to more homeless kittens and puppies. And this is where our intelligence and rationality really comes into the picture. As human beings, this is our gift to the universe.
Professor Lorene urges pet owners to have their pets fixed. Her advocacy extends beyond the confines of DLSU. She also spays and neuters stray cats in her neighborhood. Although it requires significant funding, Professor Lorene willingly sacrifices her own wants for the sake of these animals.
If you own animals that you don't kapon, okay, it's parang mahihinayang sa gasto, but actually it's more expensive to feed eh. So isang bagsakan na 1,500, it's worth it. I have spent even on street animals, not just the campus cats, kasi nakakaawa, di ba? So especially the female, I live in a dormitory, all the street cats there outside my dorm. Pinakakapon ko na yan. Those who are entering the dorm, lalo pag babae, talagang bring to the clinic right away. Pikit mata, okay? Cut down on personal expenses, walang milk tea, walang yan. Okay? And it's worth it. It's worth it. Definitely. That is if you understand things, eh. Many people don't, they're narcissistic, egotistic, and sometimes I would hear people there, mga street vendors, pag pinakapon mo, binalik na, oh, sana binigay nyo na lang sa akin yung pera. Di ba? When they realize how much I've spent. Sayang naman yan. Sana binigay nyo na lang sa akin yung pera. Yung ganyan, you hear comments like that. So many selfish people. Di ba? Hindi na sila tutulong. Pag iinteresan pa nila, yung tinutulong mo dun sa hayop.
How do they fund the daily expenses of their advocacy? Credit goes to the many sponsors, Ninang alumni, who now live overseas but continue to support the felines.
The first few years, talagang from our pockets. And then we started fundraising, may merch, but it was not going to be sustainable. I pay for a lot of things from my pocket, and then if the organization is able to raise enough funds, then they pay me back. But no pressure, But after the pandemic, I've had a team. I have a very good fundraising team with all the talents and business acumen. Ang galing-galing nila. Plus, of course, we have our Ninong and Ninang. I try to stop myself from posting donation plea if I can help it. Yung food, kami na yan. But yung vet bills, the FIP, which is very expensive, So I'm pacing also. As much as possible, I don't like to ask for donations. But sometimes we do, and we have wonderful followers who love our cats. Ninang Deutsch, Ninang Paris, Ninang New York, Ninang Taiwan, Ninang UAE, yan. These are the regular Ninang, and then some Ninong alumni. Just picture, it really takes a village. It's very hard to sustain our advocacy, and there are people helping us. So, yeah, and of course, my own money also. So, minsan yun ang concern ko when I die. Because they say, no one is indispensable. You can always hire somebody, but that's employment, and this one is volunteer work.
They say those who love cats are the kind of people who love without expecting anything in return. These cats may never be able to repay them, but for Prof. Lorene, she will continue this work without any regrets.
Cannot. So it's a wonderful thing. I don't regret. I'll do this for a million lifetimes.
There are times when people abandon cats on campus despite the risks of being hit by cars. Sometimes the cats are rescued, but other times they meet untimely deaths on the streets. What does Prof. Lorene say to those who abandon cats in the area?
They're part of our problems. Okay. Yeah. Some people are choosing to be part of the problem rather than part of the solution. Uh, they're concerned or siguro naaawa and they're thinking that we can take care of them. Okay. But there are two options there. When you dump them by the gate, it's either they enter the campus and of course we take them in already when that happens, or they go to TAF and they get run over.
Beyond advocating for the often overlooked Pusang Pinoy, Professor Lorene also speaks out against the cruelty that imported cats endure at the hands of breeders who exploit them as income sources, frequently neglecting their overall health.
So, wala naman akong discrimination. Naawa rin ako sa may breed eh. They go through a different kind of cruelty. Rescue the pure Persian. I saw the post and then may galis siya, may mage. Ang dali magpagaling ng mage. Eh. Kayang-kaya kong gamutin yan eh. I did not step up because I said, pure Persian, maraming magkaka-interest. 3 days na wala pang nagsi-step up. So I contacted my transporter friend to pick it up. Ang ganda na ngayon, utang na loob ka. Ang ganda-ganda na. Pag talagang ayaw gastusan, ayaw.
When asked about Senate Bill 2975, which has been making headlines lately, Prof. Lorene said,
Oh, the post of pause, not an improvement. You know, when I was looking at the details, you know, and Ana Cabrera is already a lawyer, so she understands the details. Parang hindi naman daw improvement, you know, parang less pa nga. So if you're trying to fight for something, it has to be a better version of what you have already. So pause was saying hindi daw eh. Hindi daw. So hopefully naisip nila yon and they're lobbying for some revisions there. The law will not really prevent cruelty. Mas mababa pa yung time of imprisonment, samantalang okay na yung ngayon.
Professor Lorene also expressed concern that the bill might discourage people from helping and adopting strays, ultimately leaving the animals at a disadvantage.
Nakita ko yung detalye. Sabi ko, bakit ganun? Of course, in the long run, I hope it's not going to prevent people or discourage people from helping. Di ba? So if you're going to control, for example, the number, okay, I understand the problem with hoarding eh. Okay? Nakawawa rin yung hayop. But there are people who can afford to have many. And the animals will still be taken care of. But if you add the more legal thing there, pangarehistro, mga ganyan, is going to add to the burden. Sana hindi, because that will backfire on the animals.
What does she believe the government should do to address the issues of stray animal overpopulation, rabies, and animal cruelty?
I think Netherlands ito, they approach the problem of stray animals from all angles. Hindi pwedeng tatakpan mo yung isang butas tapos meron ka pang ibang butas. I think it was in the Netherlands. So the breeder, the sellers, and of course the anti-rabies, and then of course yung the adoption, adopting or rehoming the stray animals. Okay, so habang wala pang nag-a-adopt, kailangan talaga anti-rabies. You know the rabies problem. It's not only the human beings who are the victims. It's also the animals. It's also the animals. Namamatay sila pagka naapektuhan na sila, di ba? But who is the one who knows about rabies? Di ba tao? Tayo yung may intellect eh. Tayo yung makakagawa ng paraan. But if you ignore the problem, it's really gonna go back to you. It's gonna blow up in your face. And recently, we've had news on people who have died from that, di ba? So, the neglect, you know, when you ignore, hindi pwedeng gano'n. You've got to be mindful. You've got to be mindful. So sa Lasal, all our cats are vaccinated. Yung scratching incidents, the signage is there, the constant reminder, via help desk, via the Archers Network, via Lasal, lahat na, from all sides. But meron pa rin matitigas ang ulo, or meron pa rin not listening. So you just have to deal with it. You just have to deal with it. You know, hindi ka pwedeng mainis ka and then throw in the towel. Hindi eh. Sometimes my volunteers get frustrated kasi parang paulit-ulit na lang. Hindi eh. You really just have to keep repeating yourself for the sake of the animals. And also for the sake of the people. We like you to be safe.
Regarding public awareness of rabies, Prof. Lorene believes that while people know about anti-rabies shots, what's needed more than awareness is a strong sense of responsibility.
Alam ng tao yung rabies shot, kaya lang ayaw. Yung nakagat yung kapatid, aso niya ang nakakagat sa kapatid na namatay. Ikaw ang may-ari. I'm sure you know about anti-rabies shot. Bakit hindi mo pina-injectionan yung aso mo? Every pet owner Ipagpalagay mong wala kang pakialam doon sa street animals eh. Pero maraming pet owners hindi nagpapavaccinate ng sarili nilang alaga. So paano yan? Di ba? It's not awareness eh. It's really the lack of sense of responsibility because they don't understand, I think, the repercussion. If you really care about your animals, pabakunahan mo. Plus kayo din so that you're safe in your house. And then when they go out, little things like that that are not little, that will blow up in our faces and it becomes really a social problem. And at the end of the day, puputokan yung hayop sa pagmamalupitan, papaluin. Minsan kahit may sakit lang, akala nila rabies. So kawawa yung hayop. Kawawa, kawawa. At the end of the day, they are part of our responsibility kasi tayo yung may intellect, tayo yung may awareness dapat. How can you teach people kindness and compassion? That comes from the heart eh. Galing na yan sa loob. Pag wala nun, kahit anong, di ba? And so we say, paparusahan ka, kukulungin ka. There's so much work to do.
Prof. Lorene incorporates into her philosophy classes the implications of human actions on animals and the planet as a whole.
If people are stubborn, ayaw makinig, and then it finally happens, Mother Nature cannot anymore sustain. Yeah, I'll just be in one little corner and bring it on.
Professor Lorene left a heartfelt message calling for kindness and responsibility to rise to the challenge when the opportunity to help an animal comes your way, and to remember that love, not money, is what matters most.
If you don't care about the animals and you only care about yourself, it will eventually lead you to make decisions on how you on what you do with the planet and what you do with the animals, because you cannot find soulful joy and soulful happiness and peace unless we pay attention to everything that surrounds us. And that includes not only human beings, not only humanity. This planet includes all other creatures on the planet. Okay? And so the sooner people realize, I actually feel sorry for people who are cruel. You will not know the joy of caring for another creature that will never say thank you to you. Okay, because it's not really about being reciprocated. To experience pure kindness and pure love, to go walk 10 extra miles, So it has been a very wonderful experience for me. On a soulful level, I'll do this for a million lifetime. I hope when the opportunity happens to you, it comes knocking on your door, you'll say yes to it. There are many sacrifices. There are many. It's not a walk in the park. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of expenses. But at the end of the day, money is not the most important thing. Love is the most important thing in the world. Okay, and not only love for ourselves and not only love for our family, but love for everything that comes your way and everything that surrounds us. So I hope you'll be able to experience that as well. It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to open up your soul and to open up your heart. And animals are beautiful creatures. They're just wonderful and pure creatures. Sana ma-experience din yun yung na-experience namin sa Lasal. Not all of our volunteers are cat people, but eventually, it grows on you. I was not a cat person. I was not a dog person, although I was never cruel to animals. But until I saw the suffering we inflict upon the animals, that did not really move my soul to do something about that, to help them. Sobrang, the crimes we have committed against the planet and against the universe and against the animals, So ito ang hugot ko sa animal advocacy eh. Yung hindi ko sila gusto kasi cute sila. Beyond cute na ako. Minsan hindi sila cute. Minsan hindi sila mabango. Minsan mabantot sila. Minsan may sakit sila. Pero the vows that you have in marriage is actually the vows that you have in all relationships, including friendships, in sickness and in health, for rich or for poor. Not even in death do we part.
It takes a village to care for animals and protect those who cannot speak for themselves. Professor Lorene reminds us that with compassion and a shared sense of responsibility, lasting change within the community is possible. Professor Lorene is a shining example of selfless service. She gives until it hurts, expecting nothing in return. There are no monetary gains, no earthly rewards, and yet her heart is full of joy. And if given the chance, she would gladly do it all over again in a million lifetimes. In a world filled with cruelty, neglect, and apathy toward animals, choose to be like Professor Lorene. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Advocates. I'm Rochelle Rubio. Until next Friday here on 104.3 The Capital.
This is where the voices of the voiceless are heard. The Advocates, Empowering Voices. Hosted by Rochelle Rubio on 104.3 The Capital.